Men and women who are therapists these days have been taught a feminine mode. They've been taught a female way to work with things. And they expect their men clients to do it like that. And man, you got to change that quick. It's not going to work. He's going to run.
Right.
Or he's going to shut down. You know?
Right, exactly. Yeah, a lot of men don't go into therapy at all. Like, they just deal with their challenges on their own.
And why don't they go into therapy? Why don't they?
That's the question.
Yeah, and there's 4 good reasons for it. You know, men are doing what comes naturally to them. The first reason is precarious manhood, where the research is clear. It's been going on for 15 years now. The research shows that every culture they have studied, and they've gone all around the world, men have to prove they are men. Women do not have to prove they're women. A woman's role is ascribed. In other words, she gets it automatically. When she has her first period, she becomes a woman. But men don't have that luxury. Men have to prove they are men. And in order to do that, guess what? That has to be in public. You have to publicly prove you're a man. Very different from the scenario with women and how, you know, women are automatically considered women. In fact, I don't think women really understand men in that respect. They have no idea that men live through a scenario where they have to prove themselves all the time. This creates a very different kind of person. And if you have to prove yourself all the time, you know, the other thing is, what are they trying to prove? They're trying to prove that they are independent and they are of high status, right? Well, what does therapy say? Therapy says, I can't do it myself. I need someone else. Dependent role. You are dependent. And so men are going to avoid therapy because it makes them appear dependent. Just like asking for directions, what does that do? It makes men look dependent. He has to depend on someone else to figure out how to get there. And if it shows in public, his esteem, his manhood drops like a rock. Because the is it Vandello that did research? I think it's Vandello. I forget. But the guy that did the research said manhood is hard to attain and easy to lose. So that's what guys are dealing with all the time. And so that's one of the 4 reasons why men don't want to go into therapy, because it makes them look dependent.
Yes, and when men admit their vulnerability or their weakness or their dependence, it lowers their reputation, their status.
Yes.
Whereas the same is not true of women, generally speaking,
Correct.
on average. Yeah.
Yes. And the second one is testosterone. You know, testosterone in men pushes them to strive for status. You know, it used to be Alan Alda, you know, with the whole testosterone poisoning crap. And all the researchers tried to prove that testosterone was about aggression and violence. They're all wrong. They now know that testosterone is about striving for status. That's what men want to do. They want to increase their status. Their minds were blown when they did this research on fairness in bargaining. And they gave some people testosterone thinking they were going to be the ones that would, you know, cheat or do whatever. They found out that when they gave them testosterone, they were more fair than the others. That's because men strive for status. Status is key, you know, for all kinds of things. And status, if going to therapy in your group increases your status, men are going to go. They'll go. But if going to therapy in your group says, something wrong with you, you're dependent, they're not going to go. You know, so that's the second reason is testosterone. And testosterone does so much. You know, we talked about it's tending to muzzle emotions, but it does so much more than that. It increases his capacity to take risks, decreases his fear. So men live in a different world from women. They just live in a different world, and most women have no clue. They think men are supposed to be like them. No, ladies, no.
And those are the messages. We hear that message from major organizations, international and national, you know, public sector, private sector organizations, that men, if they could only be more like women, the world would be such a better place.
How many times have I heard that silliness? It's just
right.
Crazy. You know, we need both men and women. We've got to love both men and women for who they are. You know, right now we're in a shaming world where men are shamed for being themselves. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, and masculinity itself is under attack.
Right. And it has been for about 40 years. You know? It's crazy.
Yeah, we need to turn that around.
We do need to turn that around. And a part of turning it around is helping people understand how men are really different from women. And wonderfully different. I mean, women are wonderfully different too. You know? We're all different. And so we need to understand that and start accepting people for who they are, not for who we want them to be.
Yeah.
And the other two is the dominance hierarchy is another reason, because men live in hierarchies. You know, all the time, men are in a hierarchy. I wish we had time to go into how that works, but it's just fascinating. You know, the boys choose sides when they're growing up, right? With the two best boys choose sides, the best boy next, the best boy next, best boy next, and down to the end. And everyone hopes, oh, don't choose me last. Please not last. That's the hierarchy. And by choosing, the boys are getting a sense of where they are in that hierarchy. It's a very good lesson for them, because it's going to happen later in life when they're at work. There's going to be a hierarchy there too. So learning how to deal with that hierarchy. But men have hierarchies every place. And think about it, the sleeves of the military says where you are in the hierarchy. The sports stats, all about hierarchy, who's first, second, third, fourth, fifth, etc.
And the music world too, you have first violin, second violin.
There you go.
Anywhere where there's an organization, you're probably going to find a hierarchy.
Yes. And then the last one is moral typecasting, which is a fairly new look at things. And they've known for years that people tend to see moral situations in terms of dyads, where there's one has what they call agency and the other has patiency. One is the agency is the person who does something to someone else, either good or evil, and patiency is someone who has something done to them. And they found over time that the people who have agency are seen as being strong and able, and they can do this and whatever. And if they ever do anything wrong, there's trouble, because they are also assumed to be in need of more punishment. People who have patiency are seen as people who are in need, are possible victims, are in need of assistance, etc. And this has been going on for years, but then Tanya Reynolds came along and she found that, guess what? We tend to see men as having agency and women as having patiency. And that is, of course, the root of the empathy gap, where we've known for years that men get much less compassion than women, period. It's just a fact. And now we know part of the reason why is this moral typecasting piece. So men not getting compassion is one more reason they don't go into therapy. They don't expect people to want to listen. I'll never forget when I was seeing men. One guy said to me, he said, "Do you really want to hear this?" He was incredulous. And I said, "Yeah, man. Yeah, go right ahead." But, I mean, that's the stance of men a lot of times, because they think in terms of hierarchy, and they think in terms of empathy gap, where people aren't going to be so compassionate towards them when they need help. I mean, like, geez, I worked with death and dying, with grieving people for 25, 30 years, and over again, I'd see the same thing. When a man and a woman had a child die, everyone would come and put their arms around the women. "Oh, how are you? What can I do for you? La, 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 la," right? And they'd go to the man and they'd say, "How's your wife doing?"
Right.
It's like he wouldn't get the same kind of treatment. So all of these four things together make it very clear why men are probably not going to want to go to therapy.